Hi, I'm Ryan Saddam, co-founder and chief experience officer at Client Savvy. Welcome to the CXPS knowledge sharing module number 1. This week, we're bringing to you Eddie Staley, the chief innovation and experience officer at Withers Ravenel. Before we get started, I would like to send a special thank you to our sponsors, especially the platinum sponsor, Uninet. Thank you for your continued support. And I encourage each of you to explore the offerings that these groups have that can help you on your client experience and employee experience journeys. Eddie is bringing a great story to us this week about how his firm is integrating both client experience data and revenue experience data to drive deeper insights and discoveries across their organization so they can make smarter, more intelligent, more profitable decisions in how they manage their projects while maintaining a very high level of service excellence and client experience for their clients. I have no doubt you're going to find this really enjoyable. For those of you new to the CXPS community, welcome. You can learn more about us at clientexperience.org. That's also where you can join so you can engage in other members-only activities like our online forum and community to discuss what you're learning this week, as well as our live Q&A with Eddie this Friday, June 12th at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can get all the details you need at clientexperience.org. Thanks very much for joining us. And now, here's Eddie.
Hello, and welcome to the Client Experience and Revenue Experience Dashboard presentation. I'm happy to be with you today, and what we're going to talk about is the relationship of client satisfaction and revenue and how to take that data and really put it into action to create a better experience for our client and a better revenue experience for our company. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the Chief Client Experience and Innovation Officer for Withers Ravenel. Withers Ravenel is a 280-person North Carolina-based engineering firm. It was established in 1983 by Tony Withers and Sam Ravenel, our namesake. We recently, about 3 years ago, transferred into a 100% employee-owned ESOP company. Again, my background working at Withers Ravenel for the past 16 years is that I'm a professional land surveyor and a geographic information system professional. And I managed a project delivery team in the geomatics department. Later in my career, I moved to business development, and then now in my current role as the Chief Client Experience and Innovation Officer, or CXIO. As in that role, I also lead the Client Success Manager team, and those Client Success Managers connect deeply with our clients and best understand their needs every one of the projects that they push our way. On a personal note, I enjoy fly fishing, and as you can tell from my background, classic vehicle restoration. Also enjoy duck hunting and upland game bird hunting. So when we're talking about client experience and revenue experience, your data has a story to tell. And to be able to tell that story, there's kind of 3 really important parts that we have to cover. We have to have the data, but we have to be able to explain that data to our stakeholders and to our audience, and to be able to tell the narrative of that data. It's also a lot easier to tell that story if we have visuals. Besides just a spreadsheet of a bunch of numbers and a ton of data, that's just really hard to engage your listener or your stakeholder with that information. So having more visuals, more ways to tell that story that is easily consumable by your stakeholder is really key. And then the last piece of making that change is to really take that data and be able to enlighten your stakeholder to take action, to enact that change. And so as we go through this presentation, at the end, I'm going to tell a very unique story about a project that started with a low multiplier with a very happy client, and how to take that particular project and how it was transformed to a more profitable project for our company, but also keeping a very happy client. Now, a couple of things that we have to have, the first steps, so to speak, that we have to have in order to tell that story is we have to have a history of client feedback data. We also need a good tie back to our revenue metrics, whether that is multiplier, utilization, whatever metrics you may capture and use to understand the health of a project. Also, you need some good targets. You need to understand what that level of service is, what those numbers mean, and where that benchmark is that we're trying to achieve. The last thing that we'll talk about is building this dashboard, and we actually use Microsoft Power BI. It has been a really great tool for us. And again, if you're familiar with pretty much any Microsoft product, whether it's Excel, PowerPoint, whatever, you'll find it to be relatively easy to use. So what I will tell you is this is not going to be a Microsoft Power BI training session. However, if there ever is a time that I could help, I'll be more than glad to share my information and share any ideas or any lessons learned that we encountered when we built our own Microsoft Power BI CXRX dashboard. So let's kind of start with the data again. We actually use client feedback tool and have been using that since 2016. So we have a large amount of feedback that spans across multiple projects and multiple clients. And it's been a great tool for us, and it makes it very easy to get this information out and into Power BI. So whatever system you're using, you're going to need a master export of pretty much all of your feedback from that particular tool that you're using. This is a pretty good example of what a standard export looks like. And I've blurred out a few sensitive pieces of information like project name and who the respondent to the feedback was. But again, you can see the questions that were asked, what their rankings were, any comments that they may have. It's a complete dump of that entire database, and it's really just going to an Excel or any other database type application. The next thing that we must have in order to make this work is we have to have an export of our financial metrics. Now, again, we use Deltek Vision, not required that you use that, but whatever format or software that you're using to capture that, you're just going to need an export straight from that software. And again, inside Deltek, we can control which fields of information, how we want those formatted, and to get those into the most usable format possible. So as you can see here, this is a pretty good example of what that looks like. And again, the metrics that you export are really dependent upon how you track the overall financial success of a project. However, there's nothing wrong with exporting more information than that, because as you'll see as we continue forward, it's actually a really great way to dive deeper into the projects and maybe even get a deeper understanding of other areas where we can make improvements. The number one thing that is required, because these are two separate tables, a revenue table and a feedback table, we must have some type of unique ID. In our case, we have a unique project number for every project that's tied back to a client, that has tied back to the financial, and is also tied back to client feedback. In fact, that's a really great point to make. In the case of client feedback tool from our organization, we utilize the Deltek Vision plugin that allows us to send those feedback requests directly from our accounting software. And that ensures that the project number is always associated to every feedback request that we put out. So let's talk briefly about Microsoft Power BI. It's really just a data visualization tool. And again, as I said, it's really just like using Microsoft Excel or any other Microsoft product. It has a lot of functionality, but it is actually very user-friendly, and something, if you've never worked in it before, you can really pick it up quite easily. This is an example of what those tables look like once they come into Power BI. And this is the main point that has to happen, or the main activity that must happen in order to make this table work. We must have a one-to-many relationship. We have one project number that's always in the data set. And then the feedback, we could have multiple feedback requests and different people returning those requests on a project. And so we're actually getting a summary or can break that information down on each individual piece of feedback. So now that we've gone through all of the kind of the back office and the magic that makes these things happen, let's dive into what it looks like and why we're taking this effort to do it. So this is sort of what the dashboard configuration looks like. As I said before, it's very visually driven. You have visualizations, different ways to show the data, different ways to configure it, different ways to slice the data. And it really depends on what it is you're trying to dive into and what information you're trying to gather out of the dashboard. So again, this is what it looks like once it's published to the web. This is the web-facing dashboard. It's visible by a select number of people in our company. We supply rights to that. And they actually have the ability to go in and manipulate and move different slicers and different filters around to basically narrow in on anything they're wanting to look at. I remember the first time that we put this out, somebody made a really good comment and said, that's an interesting eye chart. And it does sort of look like an eye chart at first with all the different circles of different sizes, but they actually have meaning. And let's kind of use that for a few moments. As we look at each one of the circles, the size of the circle is based on the overall size of the project. The larger the circle, the greater the revenue stream back to the company. The smaller the circle, the smaller that budget for the project. As you can see here, we've put in a benchmark of 4 for our y-axis, which is working with the client feedback. This is a scale of 1 to 7, and 4 stands for meets or exceeds our client's expectations. Also, in the middle, on the x-axis, we have an effective multiplier, which is one of the metrics that we use, and we have a goal of a 3.0 multiplier. And as you can see, anything that's past that number basically has a higher multiplier. Anything on the left side of that 3 has a lower multiplier. So that gives you an idea of how the graph is basically displaying this information. Now let's take a dive into what that means. So let's start in the upper left-hand quadrant. And I like to call this area the revenue opportunity area. And in fact, in this case, I filtered out scope and fees, and any record or any circle, if you will, up in this top left-hand corner is telling us where a client likes our scope and fees. In fact, we've provided them a scope and fee that exceeded their expectation, meaning they were actually expecting it to be a little bit more. And in this case, we wish we had made it a little bit more because it's not quite meeting our 3.0 goal. And so this is an opportunity to go back to the client, maybe make some adjustments of how we deliver the project, or maybe go back and have a conversation with that client of how we can adjust our scope and fees so that both the client wins and that we win, that we both have a great experience. As you can see too, we have the ability to mouse over any one of these circles and get more information in this pop-up box. That's really handy, and we can actually drill down even deeper from there to find out more information. And really why that's important is always remember the effective multiplier is a capture in a moment in time. So there could be a specific reason why that project at this specific day may not be past that 3.0 mark. For instance, we may be holding back work in progress and not billing that because we haven't quite met a milestone. Once that milestone is met, we bill that work and the multiplier could actually go up significantly at that time. So that's something to always keep in mind when you're looking at this graph is how current and how up to date is that information and where is that project at in its life cycle. The next quadrant I would like to talk about is the quadrant of success. And this is where the client, we've met or exceeded their expectations, they're a happy client, and Our multiplier is above a 3.0. So from a financial standpoint, we are a happy company. These are projects that are working for both us and the client. We've developed a fantastic relationship where this project is going to continue to afford success for both the client and for us. And these are clients that we ultimately really want to continue to develop and build stronger and stronger relationships and continue to do more and more work. Now let's drop down to the lower two quadrants. In the lower left quadrant, shown here in yellow, I like to call this area the reset expectation area. Something's just not working with this client. They're not particularly happy. We're not meeting their expectations. And just as importantly, we're not meeting our expectations either of revenue. So there's some misalignment that we need to adjust and try to correct. If we can't do that, these just may be clients that are not a good fit for our company, and that's okay. The sooner we can find that out, the better it's going to be for the client, and the better it's going to be for us from a financial standpoint and from the health and well-being of our project managers. As you all know, working on a project that's not making money and not a happy client, that's not a very fun day or a very fun project to work on. So this is just a great way to understand where those projects are and get an early indication of where maybe things may be going just a little bit wrong and something that we need to change. The lower right box is what I would call the clients at risk. These are clients that we're very happy, financially speaking. We're making money. Everybody is enjoying the project. We enjoy the work. But for some reason, the client, we're just not quite meeting their expectation. And that's very concerning. This is a client that could potentially be poached away from our business because that experience is just not where it needs to be. And so, one, I'm very happy we don't have a lot of dots in this area, but anytime I see a dot approaching this corner, that gives me a moment of pause, and that's a really good time to engage that client, understand where that gap in expectation is, and what we can do to continue to move them back up into that corner of success. So, as we saw earlier, we have all those dots on the screen, but where it gets very powerful is where I can start to filter that down and look at more finite pieces of information and drill down to specific projects and specific feedback. In this particular case, this is one of the saved queries or saved filters that I have in Power BI. It's called less than 75% build. And as you can see in the timeline, I can move the date time and see the latest feedback and the latest multiplier and look at the projects that are currently active but build less than 75%. One of the great things that does is this gives me an opportunity to sit down with our client success managers or with our project managers and understand why the profitability is not quite where it needs to be, and understand what we can do, what actions we can take to try to move those projects forward. Now, honestly, sometimes we can't move that. Maybe the scope was just not properly priced. Maybe the client, we went in and didn't have that 3.0 multiplier as a goal because they were a new client and we're trying to create a relationship, and that's okay. But in many cases, this is just basically where we haven't quite realized the value of the work that we're providing, and it's a great time to have a conversation with the client. In fact, again, as I said, we can bookmark those opportunities for growth and pull up the actual table just by right-clicking inside that area and get the full depth of detail. This will show me things like when was the project last billed, how much work is in progress, who the project manager is, who the client contact is, who the client is, what municipality or local government it may be. And so all that information is readily available at my fingertips or is available for the project manager themselves to drive deeper into that data to understand. What we've found from this opportunity for growth is it really puts the focus back on profitability and about finding ways to continue to adjust our deliverables to meet the expectations of the client while still looking after the overall health and well-being of the financials. We do that same kind of thing again as well, many times looking at certain size projects and drilling down deeper and deeper. Again, as we mouse over, again, I have a few things blurred out just for sensitivity, but again, you can see the quick pop-up information in addition to just the overall table. This is where the project manager really excels in being able to quickly go through his projects and understand what the health and well-being is and why projects are in certain areas. What I've found is ultimately just the visualization of this information makes it connect and tells a better story and allows us to take action versus just giving this information in two separate spreadsheets or some other table, or just simply having a conversation with the project manager and saying, I think there's some things we could improve. Being able to see the data and to be able to watch it change over time and see how a project is progressing both through client experience and revenue has been a great value to our company. Let me give a very specific example. This is project number 06190292. It has a real name that I'm not sharing, but it's a project that's in the western part of North Carolina. And the client was extremely happy with us. In fact, if I show the comments, they were giving glowing comments about our project manager and being one of the best engineering firms they've ever worked with. Unfortunately, the multiplier on that project was not in a great place. It had taken a lot more effort. The client had actually changed the scope some. Imagine that, a little bit of scope creep. And we were trying to absorb some of that scope creep, not wanting to go back and have that conversation about additional dollars required. When I was able to show this information to the project manager and we were able to go through the scope and understand where we were providing value to the client, but not charging for that, we were able to take that information back to the client, make some adjustments to scope, and make some adjustments to the overall fee for that project. And the results are moving that project from March 11th, from a 2.18 multiplier, to now Wednesday, May 20th, to a 4.32 multiplier. Those are real dollars. This is a project that has about a $85,000 budget on it. That is the power of understanding the data and understanding the correlation between client experience and what the client's expectations are and where there is perceived value that we're not capturing. By telling this story, this has really engaged every one of our project managers to really take a deeper dive into their projects and understand not just the experience side, but also the revenue growth side. And that's really important to us as we're an employee-owned company. Each employee benefits greatly from a more profitable project and a happier client. If we would like, we could actually go live and see how quickly and easily a project manager is able to manipulate and walk their way through different types of data. So let's take a look at the application and how user-friendly it is and easy to move around inside of the data. So first things first, this is just sort of a default view, and I can mouse over any one of these dots and get information about any particular project. The other thing I can do is start to filter down into the data. So I'm going to use this filter here for helpfulness, which that's a category of question that we ask inside of client feedback. By doing that, you can see all the scores move up together. And so you can tell that our average score is a 5.68 on helpfulness. And so this is a really good way to understand what the averages are across all your projects, but again, continue to drill down even deeper. As we move things around, I can go back in time and I can go forward in time and see how different data moves. And in fact, let's focus in on this orange circle here. This is the town of Selma and one of the projects that we're working with them on. And again, at this point in time, we had a really good metric, is about right in the 6th range. But as we continued to work with the client, you can see the circle got bigger because the budget of the project continues to grow, or the billing on the project continues to grow. But it also moved up on the y-axis. This is letting us know that the client is really enjoying the experience that they're getting with us, and they feel that we're continuing to be more and more helpful. The same thing is happening over here on the other side with some of the other circles in this area. So just by moving a slider bar and seeing the different movements of projects, we can tell, are we moving in the right direction, or are we moving in the wrong direction with that client? And that's a very powerful visualization for your project manager. So hopefully this has been interesting information for you, and something that you can take back to your company and start to look at the relationship between client experience and revenue experience. To kind of recap, you must have client feedback data. You don't have to have a lot. It's good to have, you know, a year or maybe 2 years worth of data, but honestly, you can start right away. Also, revenue metrics are a must. Whatever those metrics are, whatever it is that you measure in order to understand the financial success of a project, those need to be captured, and both of those data sets need to have a unique ID, whether it's a project number or a client name or client ID, whatever it may be. There must be a unique ID that ties those two records together. You must have a really good understanding of what your targets are for your metrics. Again, being able to set those targets are going to define what success looks like and what your expectations are for your staff and for your client. The Microsoft Power BI configuration, again, if you get into that, I think you'll find it's very simple to use. It's much like any other Microsoft product. But again, if I can ever assist, I'll be more than glad to share what we learned in going through this process. The main thing is this will give great insight to your data. It will bring new pieces of information out that maybe you would have never recognized inside of a database table or inside of an Excel table. And through that information, you're able to take action, fully engage with your project managers or client success managers, or with your client, and understand how we can make it a better project for both the client and for our company. And with that, I appreciate your time, and I look forward to talking with you soon about your client experience and revenue experience dashboard. Have a great day.
Wow, Eddie, that was really, really good. Thank you so much for sharing those tremendous insights and the innovation that you are applying to combining information in order to do new things with new information inside your organization. It's really great that you're opening the door so we can see what you're seeing and how you're using that information. I'm sure a lot of you have questions for Eddie and want to know more, and we have some great opportunities for you to do so. Reserved for members of the CXPS community, we have an online mural activity. That's an engaging way to ask questions as well as answer questions and participate in some online-based activities with your peers. We're also scheduling a live Q&A with Eddie on Friday, June 12th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a great opportunity for you to talk with Eddie, ask him your questions live, and then after the Q&A, break out into breakout rooms so you can meet some new CX peers and have conversations with them about what you learned and discuss how to take those learnings back and put them into practice in your own organization. We hope you'll join us in both of those venues. Those are reserved for the CXPS members. You can become a member at clientexperience.org. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us, answers@clientsavvy.com. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you again on Friday.